Hey, welcome to the Chaffin Church podcast. I am here with Ryan Thompson, my illustrious, is that the word? Co-host?
I mean, do you want to call me illustrious? Because if so, it's the right word.
What does illustrious mean? Right in there, in that.
Luster, shiny, new.
My illustrious co-host, Ryan Thompson.
Ding.
And also one of the greatest pastors in Holden. I would say probably the second.
He couldn't make it. Thanks for letting me fill in.
No. For a very brief time, John Barber is going to join us. He said he's going to start here. We're actually having Al Dancy on the podcast today. And so Al will be joining us in just a second. But until then...
The late, great Al Dancy.
The late, great Al Dancy. And, but John, you've been on vacation.
I have.
How's that been?
Vacation was wonderful, refreshing. We went out to Michigan, up and around Lake Michigan, to up around the Upper Peninsula. Stayed in Chicago for 3 days.
Nice.
I didn't get shot. It was beautiful. I love Chicago. Chicago's a beautiful city.
I lived there for 3 years, and I didn't get shot either.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. Went up and down the river. Had a great time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So John is you've met him already. He's the pastor of First Congregational Church.
That other congregational
Holden.
church.
The other.
Oh, but this isn't a congregation. I guess it's still
It
a
is.
congregational church.
It's a congregational church. Yeah, we don't want to.
Cut.
No, we're gonna say that this is a congregational church. It just so happens it's not in the name.
Yes. Gotcha.
The church doesn't have a middle name that we share anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so, Chaffin Church. But I want to know, real quick, because we were talking about this earlier. Why should people be connected to their church in the summers, even in the summers? Or what is a way that they can be connected in any church? Like people are traveling, people are doing their thing. Okay, and that scares the likes of you and me, like, they're gone. If you were talking to your church and telling them, listen, we need to get connected, you need to be connected to the local church, to our church you're part of, what would you tell them?
I mean, I guess I usually tell people, even though maybe you need a break sometimes from church business, you never need a vacation from God. So stay connected to God, and I think I usually roll out books for people to read in the summer. This year I rolled out like 3 books on prayer and said, take this to the beach with you or read them. And not everyone, but a lot of people read them. We'll talk about them later, so they stay connected that way. We have a pretty active prayer chain. We have about 80-something people on our prayer chain, and so all throughout the summer, and when I'm on vacation, people are saying, pray for this, so-and-so's sick, so people are praying for one another during that. We kind of stay connected on Facebook, as we were talking about. We were doing great last year, a year ago during the pandemic, staying connected on Facebook. It's kind of waned a little bit, but and of course, listening to your church's podcast.
Listening to your church's podcast.
And in our case, watching the church service on TV, which a lot of people do. In fact, when I was on vacation, I was telling Marty, I was very tempted to come here to Chaffin because I like to check out other churches while I'm on vacation, but I got lazy, and having our church just live on my TV and I could just sit on my couch and watch it was great. But that's a great way to stay connected, even when you're all over. So,
nice. Yeah. Well, thank you, John.
It's great to be here, Marty. And I'm so excited about what you guys are doing here at Chaffin. I'll tell you this. Oftentimes I walk into a sanctuary when people are modernizing it, because I like tradition, our church is historic and tradition, and I think, they ruined it. But I walked into here and I looked at it and I'm so excited because I just say new life, exciting. I love what Chaffin is doing right now. The other pastors in town that I talk about Chaffin are super excited about what Chaffin is doing.
Oh.
And I can't wait to see it fully renovated. I love what God is doing in this church. I don't know who he's doing it through, but I know that God is doing something here.
Well, it's a congregational church, so he's doing it through everybody.
Well, it's not through Marty.
It's through God and through everybody.
So the rest of this podcast will be Al and I talking
about how
great
Marty is.
It'll just be me. Ladies and gentlemen, Al Dancy has joined us.
Hey, everybody.
Al has been away with his family for so long. 3.5 weeks. It felt like a long time.
It felt like
And maybe the longest we've been apart.
for a while. In the last 14 years.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Don't judge me.
Some of us don't escape, Ryan.
Some of us don't escape.
Some of us,
Some
some
of
of
us
us
don't
can't quit,
escape.
Marty.
This is going to be
What a
crazy.
profound
Can't quit you,
statement.
Marty.
Some of us don't escape.
Don't quit me.
I can't quit you.
We're getting weird.
Ryan was lucky he escaped.
He went to Chicago and didn't get shot, is what we talked about.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
lucky. I was lucky.
Right?
He let his
That's like every
life
day in my
song
neighborhood.
sing in him.
Amen.
That's exactly right. For 4 months, my life song. Yes.
So many inside jokes. Anyways, we are here. This is the Chaffin Church podcast. Again, I said that. And the reason I wanted to have Al on is because Al and his family, I mean, Al is a father. I mean, how many kids do you have now?
40?
40?
42?
It's like a lot of kids. Right?
Al and his harem and,
No.
and all their children.
No,
Erica would kill me.
There's not that. Erica would kill him. There would be none of that. But
Yeah.
But Al
4 kids.
and Erica decided that they were going to go and travel the country. There was a catalyst behind this.
Yep.
But they went all the way across the country to California and back.
Yep.
My family did that when I was 10, but we started from Ohio, which is still 14, and so that's another 30 hours more than what
Yeah.
I went through. So we're going to talk about this, and hopefully it wraps around the title of my message this week at Chaffin Church, which will be to love mercy. So I don't know if we can kind of fit
I
that
don't
in
think we
here.
experienced any opportunity to show mercy on that trip. None.
So
None.
first of all, Al, why did you do it? Why
So-
did you go to California and back?
So my oldest daughter, Charlotte, she's 12. She'll be 13 in November. She had an opportunity to be part of a music program called Vocal Star, and part of it was to do a showcase or a almost like a end of year. What do they call that? A
Recital?
recital. Yeah, kind of like a recital. But the major difference is that there were music producers and executives actually there watching her perform, and the
Okay.
other kids who were there too. So the reason we went to California was for her to do the showcase, and it was awesome. The showcase was awesome.
Yeah?
We were there in Hollywood for 5 days and 4 nights,
Yeah?
and something like that. Yeah, that's what it was. And stayed at this awesome hotel, the Lowe's Hollywood Hotel, which is like right off I can't remember what the main road is where they have the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Got to see that. And got to see a lot of
Wow.
homelessness. And it was eye opening. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why we went. Anyways.
That's why you went.
Yeah.
Any questions around that?
Not so far.
Okay. So you got in the car, you started driving.
Yep.
This seems like. First of all, let's talk about the people you met along the way, and where you stopped. Where was stop number one?
First stop was in Indiana at your dad's church.
Yeah.
Yep. So we stayed there, which was incredibly generous and comfortable. Got to go have breakfast with your mom and dad the next day, which was always awesome to hang out with them. But usually it's with other people, so it was just
Right.
us and them,
Yeah.
being able to hear stories from them about Marty. And I won't talk about the time that he came out of the bathroom and needed somebody to
No.
wipe people. I won't talk about that.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
But yeah, no, just
Dad's a liar.
to hear about some of their history and some of their stories was great. That was our first stop. We got up later than we were supposed to, which the late great Al Hancy, I think I heard you say. And so that got us out to Indiana late at night. So we just went right to sleep and then got up the next morning, had breakfast, and then headed right back out. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
So okay. So then where'd you go?
Then we drove through into Chicago, We went and visited the Home Alone house, which was cool. When I say visited, we drove up to it, hung out outside on the sidewalk, took pictures of ourselves, and then kept going. Nobody invited us in for pizza or anything. Or
Did you ever go there?
I have driven by it in similar fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, the gate was shut, so we didn't even stop.
Right.
We just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, look, the Home Alone house. Well,
Yeah.
that was an experience. And
Yeah.
then
Was that on a date or anything?
it was not. It was not on a date.
Okay.
Mine was not a date either.
Well, no,
Yes, because I am so smooth that I'm like, hey, baby, want to go drive by the Home Alone house with me?
You're
Like,
I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have said that. I probably would have been like, yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how many states? I'm done. How many states did you go?
31 different states.
31 different states.
Yeah, when we finally counted it out, it was, most of it was just drive through, right? So, Pennsylvania, we just drove through the first time. The second time we broke down in Pennsylvania, but it's different.
Yeah.
Story. But yeah, so we drove through 31, including Massachusetts, 31 different states, not counting any place twice, but 31 different states.
All right, let's
Yep.
do superlatives.
Okay,
Most beautiful.
South Dakota.
What?
Where we were, what is it, Sioux Falls?
Yeah.
Sioux City? No, that's Iowa. Sioux Falls, I think is what it's called.
Mhm.
One, where we stayed, the community was really cool. But what it was is as we're crossing over the Missouri River, I told you this before. It was like, I didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't know what to expect, but we're driving through all these flat areas.
Yeah.
And we come up over this hill, and we're coming up to the top, and I'm like making jokes with the kids. Oh, look, everybody's going over the edge. And we pull up, we come up to the top of it, and you look out, and all of a sudden it was like the hills just went rolling and rolling and rolling. And here we are driving over this huge bridge, over this enormous river. And it was just like, the sky was clear, it was gorgeous out. That was the start of South Dakota for me. And then we drove through the Black Hills, and the way that we went and saw Mount Rushmore. The way that Google Maps took us, it took us actually the back way, the back roads.
Were you as disappointed with Mount Rushmore as I was?
I
when I saw it?
was. I mean,
It
learning
literally,
about it
and then
was
if
cool.
you read the history, it's the weirdest. Like,
Yeah.
it's just the.
I mean,
yeah.
a marvel, right, of what they did, the technology that they had at that time, nowhere near what we would have now, or what we have now. So amazing feat. It was underwhelming. I thought it was going to be actually way bigger. When you look at it, I mean, it's huge. It's like they're like 20 feet tall or something like that, which is huge. But I thought they were going to be like monstrous. They would look monstrous.
Yeah, wasn't it built
They did.
in like the 1920s or so? It was like, it
Yeah.
wasn't even that long ago.
I think they said that it finished just before World War II. The reason that it finished so like quickly, one, the head architect of it, or whatever you call him, not architect, artist, sculptor. There you go. He died,
Oh wow.
and then World War II kicked off, and it was like, well, we can't waste all of this manpower carving out rocks.
Right.
We need to finish it up. And the plan was originally to make it an even bigger attraction with other mountains being carved with Wild West figures and from history and stuff like that. Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yep.
Mount Rushmore, sort of disappointing.
Yeah.
I went, and I just don't remember, so it must have been. I was like 15, 14.
Like, I don't even remember what it looks like, but I remember being, like, I was driving to my internship in Washington State, and I was like, oh, well, I'll take a few hour detour and just see Mount
Oh
Rushmore.
yeah.
I go and see it, and it's just like,
Why did they take a couple hour detour?
and it's like $20-something to see it, and then
Oh no.
you're like,
Oh well. We have a parks pass. So
Oh, okay.
we bought a pass for
Oh.
to go to any national park. It was like $80
Oh, nice.
for a year, which means also like a lot of their campgrounds or campsites are either super cheap or free. So that was the other part of it. So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But South Dakota, hands down, driving through the Black Hills at sunset, seeing it all. I mean, it was incredible.
That's the most. Wow, that's interesting. How about the ugliest?
And I feel bad saying this. Either Memphis or Amarillo. Memphis, Tennessee, or Amarillo, Texas, were the ugliest. In terms of that, you could see they were run down. Like it was sad in a lot of ways. Ugliest in that you had stuff right in front of your face that was terrible, that human beings would be living in those conditions, and extreme wealth was Hollywood. I mean, I don't know if you remember when we just pulled in, I was like, hey, I think I FaceTimed you.
Yeah.
And literally on the corner was a camp of like 3 tents. And people just, you saw somebody with their feet stretched out outside of their tent. And then you go a block away and it's, wealth. And, you have a hotel that was just up the road that was, besides ours, I mean, ours was not a motel where we stayed. And that was literally, you crossed the street and you passed a gas station, and that was where our hotel was. So literally, not even a block. So yeah.
Most overtly Christian. Wait, who in the most?
Okay. Well, this is because I wouldn't have known this, and I don't know that it was overtly Christian, but Dancyville. Dancyville, Tennessee. It's a real place. I showed you the pictures.
Yeah.
They had, right as we drove through this little town, they automatically had like 2 churches, boom, right off the bat.
Really?
Yep. And that was just on the main road. So I have no idea what else was.
I mean, it's in Tennessee, so there's a good chance that it is actually the most overtly Christian.
Where else that it seemed overtly Christian? I mean, that's just it. We didn't spend a lot of time in places that I would say are bastions of Christianity.
Right.
New Mexico.
Bible Belt or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of churches in New Mexico, Arizona, but it didn't, you didn't get smacked in the face with a Bible as you crossed the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I will say, one of the coolest things to happen. So the night that we were driving into the Grand Canyon, we slept inside the park so we could wake up early, go see the sunrise. It had rained, like horrible thunderstorms just before we got in, and it was cloudy, and I was like, oh God, please, just tomorrow morning, please, just like, even if it's just a peek, the sky open up, please. And then it hit me, I was like, well, what are you willing to do? Not that God like plays that game, but it was in my own head of like, I will sing in front of everybody if you open up the skies. And I kid you not, I woke up the next morning and it was cloudy. And as we drove there, the clouds like seemed to, move away. So literally, as soon as the sun started peeking up, I sang, "How great is our God," out loud.
Where was that?
At the Grand Canyon.
The Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, not to like sound super spiritual, it just was like, well, God, you kept up your end of the bargain. I will declare here in front of everybody how great you are. So, yeah.
Sing that for us now.
How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God.
Okay.
And all
Well,
will see how
and
great.
now we will get copyright
How
blocked on
great.
YouTube, but
You think?
Is our
Could
Could have singing it this
God.
way?
it can pick up. The fact that you guys just sang that well is actually a problem.
Well,
with
he
the
did.
copyright.
I did. How great it is our God.
Well, this is like the police officer who started playing a Taylor Swift song when somebody was filming him, because he was like, oh, well, now that I'm playing a Taylor Swift song, YouTube is going to block this, so you can't post it there. But little did he know that Taylor Swift's record company saw that the video was posted and said, oh, well, we own the copyright, so we're going to let this
We're just
video.
gonna let it go.
And so, yeah.
Ouch.
So a bunch of other police officers were like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, you're really that dumb? So.
All right. Okay. Do you have any superlatives? Any come
Nope.
on. Are you not thinking about anything right now?
No, I think we got enough with the time we have available.
Enough superlatives?
Yeah.
All right. So, what are the biggest things that you learned on your trip? The biggest, maybe with your family, camping and all that. What are the biggest lessons that you learned that you came back and you won't think about anything the same in this realm?
Okay, one, I am a jerk when I'm hot and hungry. And there were some places we were at where, like, Erica's like, you need to go in the car and just cool off. So that's not really along the lines of what you're talking about, but I learned that about me, that I really need God to work on me with patience and kindness when I'm uncomfortable.
I wonder if that's true for most people. Is that true for you?
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of that. It's just physics, like it's physiology, right? Like you get hot, you get hungry. Like it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And the lowest level on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like a pyramid. We're not going to get into it totally, but is it's like sleep, food, food and water, and sex is another thing. You don't get some of these.
I told Erica that.
Yeah, you told Erica that. You start getting some of these basic human needs not being met, right?
Yeah.
And then you basically become not a human being in some ways.
That's how it kind of
felt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Al, what are some of the things that you will not see the same at the end? Like, you went away for 3.5 weeks, all 6 of you. I mean, that's got to be in some ways life-changing, but also internally somehow, or spiritually, you might even say, there's probably a change that will take place as a result of going out by faith. You were like an Abraham, right? Just go, and you went.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we packed ourselves up in a brand new to us vehicle, so it hadn't really been tested and tried. We packed all of our stuff up into a camper that we towed along with us, that who knew if it would, if we would break down. I didn't know any of it, right?
Yep.
And that was one of those things where I learned just how little faith I have in a lot of ways. Because it was like at every turn, I'm like, oh great, now's the moment where the wheel's gonna fall off and we're gonna be stuck here forever, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I recognize that a lot, that my faith may not be as strong as I think it is. Some things that God needs to work on me is not looking for the moment where everything's gonna fall apart, but living in the moment where things actually are good at that moment. It was something Erica said to us. We got a flat tire on the way home. We were like 5 hours from home, and she was like, "Yeah, it does suck sitting here on the highway for 2 hours. We can either look at it that way, or we can look at, wow, we just had this amazing trip, and the only thing that went wrong was a flat tire." So that was life changing. I saw poverty in a different way in New England, where I really believe this. In New England, but specifically Massachusetts, because that's where we live. I've lived my whole life. We are sheltered from what the rest of the country experiences. Right. And part of that was in poverty. The way it looks elsewhere is totally different than here. We see it. I live in a city. I live in Worcester, and there's poverty in Worcester. There's poverty in the towns surrounding Worcester. But, when entire neighborhoods and entire sections of a huge city are dilapidated and looks as if there's been no investment in them at all, man, it's crazy. And coming face to face with people who literally were living in homeless camps, I actually had never seen that to that extent before. And the other thing is how vast our country is. So many different terrains, environments, And I knew that they were all there, but how quickly you can go from lush to desert to Erica's word. She called everything a tundra. She's like, oh look, it's another tundra. So, but it just reminded me how incredibly powerful and creative God is to make in one country all these different environments. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Wow.
So trying to break the third wall.
So you learn a little bit about yourself, and isn't that the way it is mostly when you go out and you learn what happens when things aren't in your control, what happens when you learn. And what did you learn about your family?
So I'll start with Wyatt. He is super generous, actually. He's generous and really cares about people. We stopped to get gas, and of course, every time we stopped to get gas, go use the bathroom, everybody. So he's taking the other kids to the bathroom, and the guy working at the gas station was just not nice. Hey, nope, we're closed. You need to get out. And it literally was like 10:02. I'm assuming they closed it at 10. There were these two guys just sitting out there. Another guy pulled up and he's like, hey, if you're looking to go get gas, right up the road, down here in this area, there's a lot of homelessness. There are people who sometimes there's trouble, violence and stuff like that. Not necessarily with the homeless people, but he's like, I would suggest you and your family go up the road. Okay. So Wyatt's asking, like, what did he mean by, like, there's a homeless problem? I said, well, those two guys over there, very possible they were homeless, and the guy was probably abrupt because maybe he didn't want to deal with them or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at the gas station, we're pumping gas, and everybody goes in, comes back out, and Wyatt goes, I'll be right back. Oh, okay. Comes back, I see him walk over to this guy who looked homeless. Who knows? But he looked like he was in need at least. And Wyatt had bought him a drink and some chips.
Oh,
and,
wow.
He was like, I really wanted to give him, the change that I had left over from what I had spent. And I said, he's like, and then I forgot to tell him how much God loves you. He goes, oh, I just wasted that. And I was like, that wasn't a waste, buddy. So to hear one to see that he cares about people, to hear that telling people about God's love is important to a 16-year-old.
Wow.
I don't know that I had that sort of spiritual depth and courage at that age. That was really awesome.
You may have been still smoking weed. Did I say that?
It's possible.
It
is possible.
I mean, you didn't have a moral compass at that point. I'm not
I had
sure.
a little bit of one.
You did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like 15 and a half when I got saved.
And how old is he? 16?
He's 16.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be. He's about 16 and a half.
Well, then I apologize.
No, but you're right. It took me a little while to forgot to pull me out of some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I probably was.
Okay.
I probably was.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that was Wyatt.
Yeah, Wyatt.
Anything? You don't have. All of them.
I'd be going through all 5 of them, but yeah, that was the thing that stood out the most to me was Wyatt stepping out like that, him showing his character and his love for people and love for God. That was really awesome.
If all of your family was here, okay, and what would be a common theme in terms of a lesson that you as a family learned?
All right, this isn't a theme, but this is what they bust on me with now. I don't know if I told you.
I can't wait to hear it. Actually, no.
Every time we would be somewhere that would be like awe-inspiring, or even just normal, eating a burger at a restaurant. Dad, can you believe we get to do this? Because they said every time we saw something new, even if it was just lame flat fields and some windmills, that I was like, guys, can you believe we're doing this? Which is true.
Yeah, that's great.
But they still bust on me, even now being home. It's like, Dad, can you believe we get to do this? Shut up.
I want to give you a shout out there though, because What's interesting to me is, and I've been thinking about this a lot of times we go day to day to day, we do the things, we go to work, you were talking earlier that here in Massachusetts, we are sheltered from a lot of the things that do happen. I mean, we were joking, and maybe wrongfully so earlier, about you not getting shot living in Chicago 3 years.
Yeah.
But that's not a joke to a lot of people, right? Like that's,
Right.
That's a reality.
It's a reality
every
they live
day.
in.
Some
People live
places.
in, right? And that's in the United States of America. That's not even right. And so your attitude on that is really like you get to, as a family, go and travel in a car that only broke down once with 6,000 miles of traveling.
Yeah.
Right.
Just about.
And you had that expectation. Imagine if people came into church like that. We get to do this.
Yeah.
In a place that we won't get shot for going to church. We won't whatever. And it's true a lot of times pastors and church leadership stifle the culture to where it basically dies and people are like, oh, I guess I'll go to this church and whatever. But imagine if we as a community, Chaffin Church, came to church and we had the Al attitude. Like we get to come together.
The good Al attitude.
The good Al attitude, not the part where it's too hot.
I mean, it's not really about being like just over enthusiastic about everything.
No,
plastering a smile on our
Right.
faces, but it's about showing up with this sense of wonder. Like, hey, what is God going to do in this group of people who are seeking Him today?
Yes.
And how can I be a part of that? Right.
Right.
So.
Right.
That's exactly right. Like even sometimes I get a little nervous doing the podcast because I don't know what people I don't know what people are going to hear or what they're doing when they're listening. But even this morning, somebody told me, Marty, some of the things you're talking about are really convicting me, like about doing what's right, instead of I even posted a picture on the Chaffin Church page about chocolate and where it comes from. A lot of our chocolate comes from child slavery, really, in other countries. And about 70% of it, which means something you're going to eat this fall probably was harvested, using the agricultural term, by child slaves.
Yeah, when you see that fair trade symbol on the back of something, you could think to yourself, oh, that's just the bleeding heart liberals. Or no, it is not. That's
it's
a real
70%.
thing. And even if there's not child slaves involved in it, you're still economic exploitation is not good. It's not right. So even if it's adults working in that, on that coffee farm or whatever, if it's not fair trade, most of the time someone's being taken advantage of. So.
And as Americans, we really need to kind of think through that.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, I'm excited about that makes me happy that you were
Good.
totally like.
Yeah.
Buddy the Elf.
Buddy the
Buddy the
Elf
Elf.
part
I was
two.
slightly buddy.
Nothing wrong with that.
Slightly.
You beat you.
Slightly, yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully that made up for the times where I wasn't Buddy the Elf and I was Buddy's dad.
Wait a minute. A piece of gum! Well, I just want to talk very briefly about the story of the unforgiving servant in Matthew chapter 18. And essentially, Jesus tells this story after Peter asks him, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? Should I forgive 7 times? No, not 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. And last week we started talking about doing justice, loving mercy, walking humbly with our God from Micah 6:8, which is also your life verse, Ryan. And so loving mercy, right? I mean, therefore the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring up his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. So the king essentially brings in all of these servants who owed him, said, pay up, pay up, pay up. So one guy comes in, couldn't pay, So the man ordered that he be sold, along with his wife, children, and everything he owned, to pay the debt. The man begged, please be patient with me. And so, long story short, the king says, listen, I am going to forgive your debt totally. And then the man left the king. He went to another servant of his who owed him a few $1,000s. In other words, not a ton, not millions like the guy owed the other. But when the man left the king, he went to the fellow servant, and he grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. Perhaps because he was too hot. He was nervous about what had just happened,
He was
right?
hungry.
Oh, he was hungry. And the man couldn't pay, but he begged, please be patient with me. Instead of being patient, he had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. And when some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. They went to the original king and told him everything that had happened. And then the king called in the man he had forgiven and said, you evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? And then that man was thrown into a debtor's prison, the scripture says. And then Jesus finished the story with saying, that's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. I guess I'm not going to go long here, but we have been forgiven. We've been forgiven by Jesus. We have been forgiven a debt that we cannot pay back. And that forgiveness has been given no result of anything we've done. You are not good enough. Al, you are not happy enough.
Definitely.
Ryan, you are not good looking enough.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Neither true of both of you. You can't give the blue steel from the, what movie was that? Zoolander.
Yeah.
Magnum.
We cannot, there's nothing we've done, and Jesus has just forgiven us. We could say we begged, all right? But God sent his son to be our sacrifice. He's loved us. He's loved you. He looked at you, and he had mercy. Have mercy. And then many times we live our lives devoid of compassion for those around us, including our kids, including our family, including our spouses, including our fellow churchgoers on social media, on the road, in the political sphere, in family life, and we forget we have been offered a debt that has been paid. I guess I have no questions. I mean, we've probably heard this message before, but I guess one question I'll ask you guys is this: why do you think we forget to forgive?
Because we forget how much we actually have forgiven. It's kind of like a spoiled kid.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where they really haven't had to struggle for something or for the things that they have, and they take it for granted. The struggle for forgiveness isn't huge. God's willing to give it immediately and fully. Your debt's paid fully, not in partial payments, right? And so I think we become spoiled kids of the king, right? And so instead of behaving like our Father, we tend towards behaving like spoiled children. And I think some of that comes from an immature faith. You behave that way because you have not matured. You haven't matured in your faith to begin behaving like your dad, who's an adult. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of people, there's no separation, and again, these are sort of Western terms we've applied in some ways, but the process of receiving and accepting grace, and then there's kind of this somewhat separate, but very very linked at the same time. Process of being sanctified, right? Like changing your behavior and just becoming a good human being, right?
Yeah.
The way God would want you to be. Just separating those in our minds, right? Like to receive grace, we don't have to like completely upend everything, and we're gonna probably continue doing a lot of very bad things, especially for a while until that process of real sanctification takes hold. And so, and one of those things I think is a lack of forgiveness. And so, yeah, I just think a lot of people that don't forgive others do not have a proper grip on the grace that has actually been given to them. Like they don't even realize, for some reason or other, maybe they've forgotten,
Yeah.
maybe they never knew in the first place, maybe they grew up in sort of this religiously abusive, community. Maybe it was their parents or someone else in their life that caused them to feel that way. But I really think it's true that people who on some level don't believe they have been fully forgiven have trouble forgiving others.
So how do you do that? I mean, we've talked about this a lot, I assume. Maybe not in this podcast, but let's say somebody has been spiritually abused or in a manipulative environment or physically abused or battered or any number of these really intense things. How do you forgive without going back into that or allowing any of that into your life? In 2 minutes. Just kidding.
So so you're asking about forgiving the person or group of people or whatever that have done these awful things to you? Is that what you're asking?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean...
killed them and their families.
You killed...
Okay.
Wow, that is dark.
Oh, sorry.
We are still recording, yeah.
Well, Nancy,
I
everybody.
was just saying that's what the king was going to do.
Oh,
right? No,
really?
no,
Well,
no,
that's,
no, just
so
kidding.
don't
Just
cross
kidding.
Al. We've all learned our lesson. I think there's a difference between forgiveness and giving somebody or a group of people trust, right? So
Right.
trust is earned. Grace and mercy and forgiveness, those are freely given, so, and there are limitations to that.
Okay.
Even,
Right.
like just because you have forgiven a person on a certain level, if they have broken the law, it doesn't mean that, like, let's say the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has to forgive them of certain consequences of what
Right.
they have done.
Right.
So it doesn't mean, hey, someone commits a crime, I've forgiven them, so now I have to hide what they have done from the authorities. Clearly that is ridiculous.
Right.
And if there is physical abuse, for instance, in a marriage, me personally, again, I don't know how you get, but I would never recommend someone stay in that marriage. Get out. That's
Call me.
my yeah. Well, yeah. Let's be careful with Al here. But yeah. So
No, I agree with
I
that.
think just that key idea, the difference between like forgiveness and trust and all that is crucial.
I think it's important too that through that healing, because you can forgive, you can heal from it, but if you haven't, if someone hasn't helped you bring yourself back to the truth of who God is, God is never going to let you down like any other. Will never let you down.
Rickroll. Yep.
Right.
Right.
Never
Yeah.
gonna give you
No.
up.
You need never gonna. I think that's an important piece of it is to be reminded about the truth of who God is, right?
Yeah.
That I've been forgiven of a lot, and I therefore, even if it was a little, I should be willing. Not that it's easy or convenient or fast, but I should be willing to give out grace, mercy, forgiveness. And at the same time, know that I can trust God despite what happens in my human life. The difficulties, the hurts, the letdowns, all of the betrayals, all kinds of things that happen. I think part of being good leaders is helping people come back to what is foundational, and that God is good no matter what we experience. That's hard.
It's easy in our minds though, right? Like after we get hurt, I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, we tend to attribute some of these things even on God. You know, we tend to, well, God, I trusted you with this, and then I got hurt. You know, it doesn't even matter that some other person was behind that necessarily, but God, how did you let this happen? How did this happen? You know, and so, yeah. So how do you remove the attribution to that pain in your mind from God? You know, because that we learn as human beings that way. You know, we get burns touching a stove. We're not going to touch the stove again. You know, and if we on some level, consciously or unconsciously, believe that God had some role in that, how do you disassociate that, right?
So for me, right, it would be, you're a kid, you touch the stove, you know not to touch it again. But I'm going to eat what's been cooked on that stove. Because the stove itself is not what hurt me. It was me, in a sense, whether I was just foolish as a little kid or just out of my mind, whatever it was, the stove is just an inanimate object. Not that that's God, right? God's not an inanimate object. Right. But at some point, I still have to trust that stove is capable of good things too. I don't know if that really answers that. It's kind of confusing, but
I mean, we could keep going with that stove analogy. I mean,
the stove.
And basically the stove will become transcendentalism. Nobody knows
Right.
how, but it'll just become some
God.
obscure philosophical concept. Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, thank you guys. One of the things I've written down here is we naturally want to love the lovable. In other words, we want to love the things and the people who are lovable and who do lovable things around us. We naturally want to love our friends, right? But we're called to also love the undeserving. And
That's tough.
when you love mercy, we set ourselves up for God's version of success. And I have a story here. I'm going to say the story for, well, you know what? That story of the guy, Charles Roberts, who walked into a one-room Amish schoolhouse on a clear, warm Monday morning, and the 32-year-old husband and father of 3 young children ordered the boys and the adults to leave. They tied up 10 little, he tied up 10 little girls between the ages of 6 and 13 and shot them, killing 5 and injuring the others before killing himself. And then the world watched in amazement as on the day of their son's funeral, nearly 30 Amish men and women, some of the parents of the victims, came to the cemetery and formed a wall to block out media cameras. Parents whose daughters had died at the hand of their son approached the couple and offered condolences for their loss. And they grabbed a hold and they loved on the mother, specifically the mother of that man, and they let her know they forgave her, and her son rather, and they loved on her. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, one of the girls who survived the massacre helped clean her home before she returned from the hospital. They had built that relationship.
They didn't say like, oh, this is the judgment of God on you.
No, a large yellow bus arrived at her home around Christmas, and Amish children piled inside to sing her Christmas carols.
That's incredible.
Do justice, love mercy. So amazing what happens when you love mercy instead of just simply justice in the way that we normally associate justice, right? Like get people back, revenge. I was
just gonna say, it's kind of like Jesus is this enigma, right? Where he's calling us to do these really hard things. You know, deny yourself, take up the cross, love your enemies, pray for people who use you, right? Those are nearly impossible things to do as a human being. And same thing, if I love justice, how can I also love mercy? Right? Because I want people who do the wrong thing to get what's coming to them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how can I? Well, the only way that you can is through the power of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit giving you the ability to do things that are, when I say supernatural, I don't necessarily mean like miraculous, healings.
Right.
I mean things that don't come naturally to us, right?
Yeah.
Me wanting to go to the home of my child's killer and clean for them or sing for them or go to the funeral and block out the media, that is not natural.
Right.
It is something supernatural that only God can do through a person. Yeah.
All right, well, that's what we got for you today. Thank you for joining us. A couple of things here tonight, which you won't be able to go to, but tonight is the community cookout. So by the time you see this, that will have already happened. However, next Thursday, the next Thursday is which is what's the day?
12th,
12th?
I believe.
The 19th,
Nope.
the
Yes.
final community cookout will be at the Cohane's house. So that's in Princeton, 31 Beeman Road in Princeton. Also, if you are watching this on Sunday morning, the ladies' board game night is happening. So if you're a lady, check that out. Ladies, check it out.
Yes, it's ladies' night. Board game
Well,
night.
see that.
I don't know.
See,
Something like
they're gonna hear this.
Oh, dang it, that's
robots,
two strikes
We're all
now.
done. Ladies'
that.
night.
Oh, done.
And then also, if you enjoy the Chaffin Church podcast, we would love it if you wouldn't mind giving, if Chaffin Church is your church home, giving to help us continue this podcast. You can do that at chaffin.church/giving, or you can send it to 155 Shrewsbury Street, a check. Do people still use checks?
Yeah.
They do? Okay.
Yeah. Not often, but
Here at Chaffin Church. Or you can also text any amount to 84321. Is it pound 84321 or is it just 84321?
Just 84321.
84321.
I've used it.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very simple.
Very simple. Sweet. Or you can download the app. Check out the app. I like the app. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the app's pretty good.
Maybe we should do a whole episode on the app.
Yeah.
Are you telling me my idea is boring? I think that's what he's doing.
It's okay, buddy.
So next week I'm on vacation, but Ryan has something good brewing.
I haven't started brewing it yet, but I will. It'll be brewed in the appropriate amount of time
Okay.
before
Nice.
next podcast episode.
Thank you, Al, for joining us.
Welcome.
Yes, thank
Al
you.
is
Thanks,
our
guys.
past. No, we don't have
We
those.
don't have those anymore.
titles. He
I'm
is a
just
part of our
the
leadership team,
Yep.
and he's making it happen. He's doing.
And an all-around good guy.
Yeah. I don't know. Something like that.
That's been your good news for the week.
Now go and give some out.